Tonight, a dire warning from Dr. Anthony Fauci. Reopening the country too soon during the coronavirus crisis will cost lives.
There is a real risk that you will trigger an outbreak that you may not be able to control, which in fact, paradoxically, will set you back, not only leading to some suffering and death that could be avoided, but could even set you back on the road to trying to get economic recovery.
How are you doing? I can hear you fine.
Good. I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Good. I'm doing well. Enjoying a chance to not be at work today. This is kind of a treat.
Well, I'm glad that you consider it a treat and not an obligation.
No, you're good. You're good. Actually, your series has been really interesting to watch so far. I'm looking at some of these previous ones you did, and I'm just like, was this invitation by mistake? You've got some really big names showing up on here.
Yeah. And it's funny that you say that because I've even, spoken on the podcast basically saying I have no business interviewing some of the people that have been on here. Like, I am not a journalist. I have no real credentials. I have no real history, even podcasting. But I think what I've come to find is that a lot of these people, first of all, I think a lot of people in the creative space are just nice. I think they're just, usually pretty like kind, open-minded people. And I think probably even more importantly is the fact that a lot of these people just have nothing to do right now,
Your backup plan. No.
Yeah.
People seem to genuinely enjoy it. It's awesome. And I agree. People are probably looking for something to fill their time right now. But the interviews have been amazing. I loved that you had Britt on from Philly Unknown, because I have so much respect for what he's doing right now and the work that he's doing out in the community. So it was really cool to just get an hour to listen into his thoughts and what he goes through on a daily basis. That was awesome.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I've known about his work for a while, and he is just in this unique position where he gets to be on the front lines in kind of a different way than maybe like the medical or the scientific community is. He's on the front lines for people that the coronavirus is almost kind of an afterthought, because a lot of those people are just trying to get such basic needs met that it's almost like this, first world problem kind of, way of looking at it. And I just thought that's an interesting, he has an interesting position. And I was just, super curious to know about what's going on with him. And also, he's a better person than me, frankly. I mean, to do all the stuff that he does is just really, it's crazy, and it's super valuable.
Yeah, I don't know where he gets his energy from, but being on the ground where he is, he's getting access to and the trust of a group that has traditionally felt so marginalized, not just by the medical community, but by everybody in general. And so he has a chance to make a real change in that community where, the rest of us may not. And that's absolutely contributing to the slowing of this virus. So it's awesome to see his work out there.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I need to get out there one of these nights with him and do that experience at firsthand, for sure.
Yeah. They were building, I think, a community garden, I heard last weekend or something, over at the Roost Street Hub, which looked amazing. So I'd like to get over there and break some rocks and get rid of some frustration in my life, but also contribute to some community good as well.
That's a good call, actually. Yeah, you can go and lift some heavy things and throw them on the ground, and that it's a double double win, I guess.
It's how my kids handle their frustration. So if it's working for them, maybe I'll do the same.
Yeah. So maybe that's kind of a good segue. Actually, is I know how difficult I've got it right now with having one kid, and I can only imagine the stress that somebody who is a medical doctor, like a family physician, correct?
Correct, yeah.
Who is probably having to absorb a lot of the stress that a lot of other families are, I would assume, inevitably going to ask you about. And then at the same time, how do I be, how do I have a family and be a mother and all the things that you have to do? So I'm sure it's crazy for you right now.
Yeah, it has its ups and downs. There are times when I am grateful for the job I have, because I think if I weren't working right now, I would probably be going absolutely stir crazy. And it gives me something to not focus on the news all the time and just dwell on all of the fear and the insecurity that's going on right now. But yeah, on the other hand, it's posed some really unique challenges for my family in how we protect ourselves. Being out there and taking care of these patients. We had a lot of discussions at the very beginning when the pandemic was sort of just ramping up. What do we do, if one of us gets infected? Where will the rest of you go to live? How do we prevent bringing this home to the kids? I mean, it even got to the point where I was like, oh my God, we never made a will. We never talked about who will take care of our kids if something happens to both of us. We had to have these really painful, sobering conversations. And I'd call my mom and be like, Mom, will you take the kids if we don't make it out of this? Conversations you don't want to be having with people.
Right.
But necessary conversations. And I think by now we've sort of fallen into a routine with it. Like the kids know that when I get home from work, Mom needs to decontaminate first. So everything has to come off and go in the wash, and I need to go shower first before they can hug me. And that was a miserable couple of weeks at the beginning because they just didn't get it.
Right.
But now they've fallen into their pattern, and my 3-year-old will be like, you can't go outside. There's a virus floating around. they've got it down now. And I think it's kind of a new normal for them, which is sad, but
yeah,
it also shows just how adaptable these kids are too, that they have totally fallen into their new patterns of Zoom school and, wearing a little mask outside. And we're coping day to day. And sometimes you just sort of have to stop and not think about it to get through to the next day. But
so you have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old?
Yeah, 3 and 5, exactly. Yeah. And you have a daughter too, is that right?
I have she's almost 2.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's funny. So you mentioned kind of, it's sad that it's this new normal. And one of the things that my wife and I have been talking about recently is, and I'm hoping that maybe you have, some sort of guidance on this or advice or something, or at least maybe you can relate to it. Which is that I think for the first couple of months that this was going on, I think she was more of like the worry wart than myself. And I was just sort of like, look, she's not going to get a chance to hang out with maybe other kids for a little while. And, but it's not the end of the world. I mean, look how much, love she has, and look how much she gets to see her parents right now. And that's like supremely valuable. But then I think over the course of the past maybe week or so, I'm starting to feel a little bit differently about it, in that, I've gotten the impression from the news lately that this really may take a really long time. I mean, this may not be like a 2 or 3 months. I mean, we really may not get to normalcy for like multiple years. That's an actual legitimate possibility, I think. And so now, my brain has kind of gone to this idea of like, yeah, she'll be okay, but at what point is she like missing out on, like you always hear about critical periods of learning. Like if a kid, misses out on the critical period for speech, like they'll never actually get it back. So I realize that's an extreme example, but like, is she missing out on a critical period of socialization? What is the cost of that? And then trying to weigh kind of the risk reward between that and, well, what if one of us gets sick and in turn my mother, who is in her 70s, gets sick? And so that's really where my head has been lately. And I'm just, it's hard to get guidance from the news at this point, because it's either we're trying to scare the shit out of you, or this is a complete non-issue. And it's like,
there's not.
Right. And I know that it's somewhere in the middle. I know it's not maybe as bad, although you have to be careful saying stuff like that. But I know that it's not we should all be shitting ourselves with fear thing that like, the news sort of says. But I also know that on the other side, it's not this like, who cares? Let's just go back to work willy-nilly thing.
Yeah. I mean, the hard part right now is that there is just so much uncertainty. And so there is definitely a possibility that this may have kind of, what they call bimodal distribution, where we see, this big rush now, and then this peak that happens in the fall or in the winter again. But nobody knows at this point. And I do think, we're in for the long haul for this, for sure. We've got at least a couple months ahead of us, if not longer than that. Nobody really knows, myself included. Will we ever truly go back to normal? I think that's a good question. Humans are so instinctively social with one another, and we have these gatherings. And now, after having lived through this, will it change the way we interact with each other going forward? I don't know. But I do think that our kids will find a way to work around it. I think that our educators are working their asses off trying to figure out how do we get these kids the skills that they need and the socialization that they need. And I think we will come up with other ways to adapt and work around it. So I think that they're going to turn out just fine. I think if it gives you any peace of mind as a parent, I don't think that she's going to have any major fallout from this. But what normal will look like for her, who knows? It's a really uncertain period for everybody right now. And we're just trying to get used to the idea of masks for an eternity right now, because keeping one on a kid is like near impossible. If you do it less than a 2-year-old, I don't know how you're doing.
Well, we haven't even tried yet.
But you can't.
Well, today was like the day where we kind of looked at each other and said, all right, we're going to officially launch let's figure out a way to keep a mask on her face than more than 5 minutes program.
Did you sedate her? How did you do it?
Well, we haven't, it hasn't happened yet. This is probably maybe 5 minutes after we're finished here, we'll give it a shot. But my idea was to if we all wear the mask at the same time, it'll be like this fun game or something rather than hold still and.
Yeah. We turned them into fashion accessories. Today I'm going to wear the blue one. Now it's the pink one. It sometimes works, but yeah, it's not easy for them. And it doesn't help that we got such conflicting guidance from medical bodies for a while. For a long time it was, don't wear a mask. You need to save them for the healthcare workers. And now it's, okay, you do need to wear a mask. Actually, oops, we made a mistake, but
right.
Make sure you get a cloth. It doesn't help this period of uncertainty when you're getting this very conflicting information from major news sources, from medical governing bodies. It doesn't help the situation at all. But it's evolving. This is something we have never lived through before. Almost nobody in this lifetime has lived through a pandemic unless you made it through Spanish flu.
Right.
And there's more to come. So I do think we'll find a way to get through. And the data is optimistic. I mean, things truly are getting better in Philly. I'm kind of a data hound. So every day at 1 p.m., the city has its press conference about where the numbers are and what it's looking like. And so the last couple of weeks have definitely been trending downwards, but it's a lot slower than we want to see. And that's what people are having a hard time adjusting to. And we don't know where you find the sweet spot between keeping people safe and also preserving their economic livelihood, jobs and unemployment. Somewhere we have to kind of decide where that critical balance is. And I don't envy the people who are in the position of making that decision right now. I mean, I can't imagine.
No. I mean, you talk about, there's a lot of jobs out there. There's a lot of businesses where it's like, you're not going to keep everybody happy. Someone's always going to be upset. I mean, I don't know that it could be any more of a perfect example of that than this right here. And, regardless of what your politics are, it's just like, I envy anybody, you know what I mean? It's like, I have no idea how in the hell you're supposed to not be the most hated people on earth right now.
Yep.
Science or politician or otherwise.
It's not going to go well either. But I mean, I think that as we shift back towards our normal, we'll certainly still have to work really hard to keep, our elderly people insulated, people who are suffering from a lot of medical conditions. It's not going to be this, free for all on Memorial Day where it's like everybody gets to go outside now. There's just, it's going to have to be a really slow return back to things. And probably there will be designated shopping hours for seniors for a while. And, I can imagine there will still be caps on getting into the grocery store and how many people they're letting through their doors. But things are going to change permanently. We'll just shift for it.
So do you think that it's the better course is to, and I say this based on, I can't remember what his name is. Michael Osterholm, I think is his name. Mm-hmm. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Yeah.
He's the epidemiologist. He mentioned recently, maybe, I don't know, about a week ago, that his sort of new prediction was that roughly 70% of the country will end up with the virus. Now, whether that's like sooner or later, I think that was sort of to be determined. I think he probably meant like many months down the road. Mm-hmm. But regardless, 70% will get it. And the question was whether or not it'll just be this like slow burn from like where we are now, or whether it'll seemingly be, fine. And then as it gets cold, or any of these other theories as to what can make this, bad again will happen. And so that's obviously prompted the whole debate as to like, what is actually the strategy to get back. So I was just curious if you had an opinion on that. Like, does it make more sense to just sort of like, look, take every precaution that we can, but let's just get back to it, and it is what it is, or is it something else?
It's a hard question to answer, but I think at least for now, we need to continue taking every precaution, mainly just to buy us time to figure out how we manage this. There's obviously been several different drugs that they've tried, some with varying levels of success. But none of them is perfect. The drugs that we have reduce hospitalization by, on average 4 days. It doesn't improve your mortality from it. We don't have a vaccine yet. We're working on it. So the hope is that if we can keep up, extensive precautions long enough to buy us the time to have the clinical trials to research the vaccine and really test it out and get the data, then that may help us combat if and when we get that second wave down the road. And I don't think it's unrealistic to say that much of the population may potentially contract the virus at some point. I think it's very feasible, but again, we also have to remember that the vast majority of people who get this, thankfully, have a very, mild course of it. And, the symptoms are not severe, but it's just that certain percentage of the population that's more at risk that we have to worry about. And obviously, when you see the cases on the news, it's always, the young, healthy 30-year-old who got hospitalized, who was the marathon runner and, ran, an Ironman, it's always the really extreme cases. And you're like, I know I took up running when this whole thing started.
Maybe I should stop running.
After like a very long hiatus from running, I was like, okay, I better start getting myself in shape to fight this thing off. But yeah, you get the really horrible cases on the news, but we have to remember that most people do, thankfully, really well. And yeah, it sucks like any other flu would, but you recover from it and you move on. It's the other people we have to protect. So
yeah. Do you have anybody in your family that you're sort of distancing yourself and your family from?
Yeah, my immediate family, we've stayed together in the house. That we sort of decided if we would live separately, and because we didn't know how long this thing would go on for, we decided we would just stay put because we thought it would be more traumatizing to the kids if I moved out for that long of a period of time. But I haven't seen my parents. We haven't seen my in-laws. I was going to drive up to my mom's for Mother's Day and do this like, "Hey, Mom, I love you" from the car. And then I found out that she was actually out breaking her own quarantine, having a Mother's Day with her mother. So cue my disapproving doctor scorn. That's okay.
Right. So it even happens in the doctoral family circles as well. It's not just, for the layman's dinner table. It's for the doctors as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. You can't control what your family does, no matter how much you suggest to them that they need to stay home and stay locked up. They're all starting to go stir crazy and sending me conspiracy theory links that I look at. And I'm just,
oh, really?
Oh, God, yeah. Even in your own family.
Do they do that to troll you as the doctor, or do they do that just sort of, hey, I'm curious what you think about this, like sincerely?
A little bit of both, depending on the family member, unfortunately. Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely some trolling going on. But some of them I think probably do take that and look at some of these theories that are out there and think, well, maybe there is some, grain of truth to that. And, these theories are spreading just as fast as the virus is. But I think a lot of it is that people are just looking for some sort of explanation to make it all make sense. China manufactured this virus, or it got loose from their lab, and that explains why all this is going on. We always want an answer in a time of uncertainty. And I think that's why people are flocking to these conspiracy theories. So yeah, even in my family, they're not immune to it.
Right. Well, you mentioned something earlier about sort of the uncertainty within the medical community. And in my opinion, I think that's a big driver for why, a lot of the alternative theories even come out to begin with, and why they get steam is because, like, when, and it's even happening now with, I can't remember the name of the thing that young children are now getting in New York City, which is similar to this other illness. What is that called? You know what I'm talking about? It's just like a recent thing the last couple of days where they break out in these like
the rashes. Yeah, there are some dermatological manifestations of it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, but like that, and then if you don't remember, like I don't know, a couple of weeks into it, it was just like, oh yeah, you might also lose your sense of smell and taste, and I was like, what? Like, what is that? Yep. And then it was just like all of these things that the World Health Organization or whatever entity didn't know about like the day prior, just will come out of left field. And that leaves, anyone, whether like open-minded or not, to conclude that, okay, so they don't really know what's happening, which is fair, beyond sort of what they know already about previous things. But of course they don't know this one. And I think it just becomes easier to, well, so what the hell is going on? And so you start looking elsewhere. And it's just a weird spot, I think, for the medical and scientific community to be in, because, it's not like, they're allowed to change their minds. Like, they're allowed to uncover new data, but I don't know. We just live in this environment these days where it's like, if I don't get the information immediately, it doesn't, I don't want to do any more research. I don't want to give them the benefit of the doubt and say, well, maybe they just don't know yet. And I think that's, gives legs to all of the conspiracy stuff.
Yeah, I think so. Nobody wants to hear that you don't know. I mean, that's not, when you go to the doctor, you want a diagnosis when you walk out of there. You don't want them to be like, well, it could be this, it could be that. People don't deal well with that. And yeah, I think that's probably a huge driver why people are turning towards these crazy theories, that 5G towers are spreading the virus.
That's my favorite one, by the way.
Me
5G
too.
one.
Me too. I'm like, have you looked over? There are plenty of countries out there that have never heard of 5G. And I promise you, they're not doing too well over there right now either. But yeah, that one's my favorite too. At least some of the other ones were more plausible, like the one where,
right,
there's the big laboratory that does all these research into these bat coronaviruses in Wuhan, China, and the theory that maybe it got out from there. I mean, at least that's a little more plausible. But the 5G. Come on. Yeah, I'm not saying that any of that actually escaped. I mean, that's not what happened, but.
Well, it's like that theory could at least be a good movie. The 5G one is like, it goes immediately to the Sci-Fi Channel. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't have any time in theaters. So it's like, at least
Sci-Fi Channel at like the 2 a.m. slot.
Right. Yeah. Right after, Slugs, the horror movie or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. No driving volume there. Nobody's going to watch that.
Right. But yeah, it's true. Like, some of them, I mean, and you probably saw that one video that came out just recently that, like, I mean, everyone knows was sharing
the pandemic one.
Yeah. And, you give something a budget and it looks good. And the person, doing the interview and the person answering the questions, they seem very grounded, and no one was hysterical or anything like that, which is usually like your first red flag to like, should I be listening to this? And, and so when you hear that, you kind of, there was really no reason to think that it was bullshit unless I think you had some sort of a background into what was being discussed. And so I didn't even know what to think when I saw it. I was like, oh, this is, totally plausible.
Yeah, I didn't watch it. I had a bunch of people send the link to me and I thought, oh, I should see what people are talking about. And then there was this part of me that was like, but why am I going to click on it and give them more views and add fuel to the fire? So I may watch it. I'll get back to you if I do and let you know what I think of it. But I've heard enough stuff about it. There's just a lot of fear mongering in there. And I think Bill Gates might play into it somewhere. But I don't know. What did you think of it? I actually didn't see any of it. So,
well, I mean, the first little bit of it seems plausible as you kind of go down as you watch a little bit more of it, you start getting the impression that like, oh, this is sort of an anti-vaxxer person. And then it's kind of, as soon as I got to there, I was like, all right, something's fishy here. Yeah. But one of the, so Colby Brown, the photographer, I don't know if you know him or not.
I recognize the name. Did you have him on?
I did. Yeah.
You did. I thought so. Okay. Yeah.
He might've been the first person I had on where I was like, holy shit, Colby Brown's coming on my podcast. He was like the first one. But he, by the way, he's actually from Pennsylvania. So he lives
is he really?
A couple hours away. But anyway, evidently, stupid light keeps falling down. Evidently, he is a photographer who is trained as, I guess, immunology or something like that. He like went to school for that. And so he was like, like the most upset about the pandemic video. Like, you could tell he was probably like the first person that was just like, all right. So he immediately posted this like link to a bunch of follow-ups from like there was a big Reddit discussion thread about pandemic and just like debunking all the stuff. And so I thanked him when he posted that, because I was like, yeah, dude, it was well enough filmed to where a lot of people are going to be fooled by this thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, he stood up right away and was just like, nope.
No, thank you.
Nope.
I know that's the problem. There's just with internet and social media, and when you don't know what your source is and where you're getting it from and where they're getting their data from, it's just so easy to fall for this stuff now if you're not constantly fact checking it. That's the really scary part, is it can easily look good with a little shiny production on the surface.
Right.
Yeah. Really easy to fall for it. I know I've had, people in the medical community who I was like, you should know better. Why are you sending me this link? But they got suckered in, they clicked on it and it went from there.
Yeah. And there's too much to know about the world to be an expert on everything at the same time. So it's like, like you said, like, you're a medical doctor. So chances are, you would think that most people in the medical community, whether or not they're like epidemiologists, would have a harsher degree of like skepticism for videos like that. And yet I maybe that's not necessarily true, like maybe a lot of people that are sort of in a sister profession of something are still, capable of believing or buying into something, because I mean, hey, they're not a complete expert on whatever that thing is.
Yeah, it's easy to get suckered in. It absolutely is. And idle time doesn't help that either. We've got a lot of people who are spending extra time at home now, or, instead of having patients in the office, now we're doing a lot of telehealth stuff, and there's downtime, and people are filling that time with stuff like this that just breeds anxiety and fear and questioning. That's not helping.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes I think the whole attraction to the conspiracy theory is the fact that like you want to be able to hedge your bet on something like in advance, and then you can kind of, I told you so.
Right. I told you. I know.
Right. Because it's like, I don't think there's that many conspiracy theorists that like only hardcore believe in one. I think they're often like, I'm just going to grab like, 100 of these things. And I'll just kind of place bets evenly distributed through all of them. And then when one works out, I get to be the genius.
Oh yeah. When they throw it to something's going to stick if you throw everything at the wall,
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So how's the telehealth stuff? Is that so weird?
It's so weird. So we still see a decent number of patients in the office I work at, because we are taking care of a decent number of sick. But most of the normal routine visits that I would do, we're calling them and being, don't come in. We don't need you here. We don't want you here, getting exposed. And in the beginning, there was a tiny part of me that thought, this is going to be amazing. I'm like, I can roll in my scrubs. I can forget doing anything with my hair in the morning and just chat with people on the phone. And then we started rolling out the video calls. And so then that went away pretty quickly. I needed to actually look like I showered that morning.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it would be easier, but honestly, it's 10 times harder. The patient's trying to describe that little white pill that I need a refill on. I can't even see it or look at it. The visits take 10 times longer. And in a weird way, the video visits actually feel in a way more intimate than having the patient in the room. And maybe it's because it's a glimpse into their home and what things look like. But it's in some ways feels a little more unsettling. And I miss my patients. That's the main reason I went into medicine, is because I enjoyed fostering those relationships and taking care of families. And I don't feel like I get that anymore. It's just a very disconnected way of dealing with medicine. So I am ready for it to get back to normal. It obviously won't anytime soon, but
yeah,
but we're getting through with it. It's okay.
Do you feel like off your game when you're doing it, just because it's like this new environment that you're not like getting into the flow of or something? Like, does that feel odd?
A little bit. I mean, you spend a lot of time troubleshooting tech issues at the beginning, but yeah, it feels like everything is a little bit different. Stuff that I normally would have been on people to do. You need to get your labs done. Your mammogram is overdue. I'm like, well, everything's closed, so we can't schedule that. They'll be like, I have this weird rash right here, and holding something up to the screen. And I'm like, let's just try this cream on. And you start making these calls that you probably, you would have handled it in a different way if you had them in the office, but you have to constantly make that decision. Is it something that I think is so serious that I need to see you in the office? Or do we hedge our bets and try something for a couple months until I can see you? Yeah, it puts you in a very uncomfortable decision-making position, which is hard. But the patients are very grateful for the visits. Every time I call somebody or video them, there's this palpable, oh, I don't have to go into the office, thank God. And I don't blame them. I don't want them in there either.
Right. You heard it here, folks.
Yes.
Doctors
I don't want you in my
either.
office. Don't come in. An apple a day. Yeah. So it's been an interesting transition. And then trying to combine that with taking care of the sick. And, if they do have to come in and see me, it's generally because they're getting swabbed, and nobody likes having that done. There's nobody who thanks me at the end of me trying to swab your brain out. So
do you have those ones that go like way in the back of your,
Oh yeah, I know. There's nobody who's been happy with me at the end of one of those. I know.
How does that actually work? Like, what are you're attempting to swab what specifically?
Yeah, it's called your nasopharynx. So basically you thread this little brush back through the nose all the way to like the far back wall of like the nasal cavity. And it literally feels like I'm swabbing through your brain. So they start tearing, they start coughing, it's just, I've had one done because I had to get tested for flu a couple of years ago myself. And it's not painful. It's just this horrible sensation that this is not supposed to be in there.
Right.
So.
Yeah, that's so odd. I remember I saw the first one actually with Peter Hurley, another photographer who also happened to be on the podcast. He's a New Yorker, and he thought that he had it. And so he actually, he did like on his Instagram story, like the whole process of him like going to the, which like ordinarily I hate stuff like that where I'm like, dude, stop it with your 28-part Instagram story of here's what I ate today. But in this case, I was like, this is great because it was like, all right, I'm going to go get tested. So here's how it works. And it was just like, I'm getting in the car, I'm walking up to the hospital. Here's what the hospital looks like, or not a hospital, but one of those, like, I think it was one of those like
standalone, like tent facilities.
Setups. Yeah. And then you see the guy like, and I didn't realize how insane it was. And the thing is like, I don't know, that long, like
it goes back pretty far. Yeah.
Yeah. And the whole thing and he kind of had this, like, I don't think he expected it either. Like, I think he thought, oh, they'll just put it in my nose like a little bit. He had this like shocked look. And I have a feeling that he wasn't prepared. Like he didn't think that, Instagram was going to see that, you know what I mean? Cause he seemed genuinely surprised.
Yeah.
Like, oh God.
I'd watch that story.
Yeah. I don't think he pinned it. Maybe he did.
That's a shame.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely not fun to do. And there are other ways of swabbing, but that tends to be a little bit more accurate. So we usually subject everybody to that. But yeah, it's an interesting process. I mean, we really try to get people in and out because the longer we have you in that room, the more exposure there could be for us or other people around us. So there I am, like sheathed in, 18 layers of plastic, fumbling around with this little brush trying to get to you. Nobody's happy about it. But until we come up with a better way.
Have you had like your own like PPE issue? Like, was that an issue for you or not so much?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it's an issue everywhere in the country. I'm pretty lucky in that where I work, I think is in a better position than most places in terms of our PPE storage, just solely because there was a lot of foresight to stock up ahead of time before the shortages started happening. And definitely we all, everywhere is we're using stuff. I have colleagues at other hospitals who are coming up with creative ways to store their N95 masks. Somebody who tried baking it in the oven. I have one colleague who has this Tupperware container and she'll put it to her face and she'll pull the straps down and sort of strap it into the Tupperware so that she doesn't have to touch any surface of it so that it can be reused the next day. It's a big issue everywhere. But it also is really heartening to see the way that everybody from the community has really responded with trying to get us access to PPE. Companies that normally did purses and shoes, now 3D printing these, the eye shields and manufacturing the masks, which is so cool. We were the lucky recipients of a big donation of PPE, which was amazing. And it helps because it's not much between you and the virus when you're wearing this stuff. One little slip and you're like, ooh. But it's the best we got for now. And then
Yeah.
it's really disconcerting when you watch the news and you see the way other countries have handled it, with the full-on hazmat suits where they look like they're literally about to, get out and do that scene from E.T. when they're walking through the tubes.
Dude, I was literally read my mind. I was just going to say the E.T. scene.
Yes, that scared the crap out of me as a kid.
Same.
Yeah, that was really horrifying. No, and
I
I'm
can
there
even
and
remember the song that's playing as they're walking around. It's like
Yes.
it's like a French horn or something because it's
Yes.
John Williams,
Scariest part of the whole movie right there. Yeah, but no, we have nothing quite comparable to that in the United States, at least. So, but we get by. So
I made the mistake of like right when this had started. I suppose it was like, probably right around the time that the NBA shut down, because in my opinion, the NBA shutdown was the beginning. That was like,
totally.
yeah. I mean, I remember like they announced it, and then there was like footage of, I think like there was this great clip of like Mark Cuban, and he's sitting on the he's sitting courtside at the game, and all of a sudden he just kind of gets this text, and he goes, and he's looking around, and they kind of stand up, and then they call the game, and they leave. And I remember that was like the moment of like feeling like the protagonist in the movie. You know what I mean? In the science fiction movie, because everything, it was like that, night, hundreds of other things shut down. And then the next day it was like, and hockey and, all these other sports. But anyway, the point is, it was right around the time that started happening where it really started to feel real. And admittedly, I was probably still in the phase of like, it's like a fun snow day, like let's all just be inside, and, thinking naively about like how much of a long haul this is. And foolishly, I watched, what was the name of that film? The one with Matt Damon that's like so closely reflects this entire situation. Oh God, I can't remember what it's called.
Tongue. I know what you mean. Yes, Contagion. Yeah.
Contagion. Yeah. And, thinking about like watching that movie and kind of like, oh, this will be fun, and then, here we are months later where I'm like, it is unbelievable how close that movie is to everything that's happening. Granted, on a less insanity, kind of scale. It's not as deadly, but you remember at the end of the movie, they even show like a bat, I don't know, a bat like shits on a pig, and then the pig gets slaughtered and she eats the pig, and something like that. And I'm like, this is amazing at how accurate this actually is.
Yeah, it really does feel like we're walking around in some sort of a weird futuristic bad movie. I try to get outside at times when there aren't other people out. So I'll go out for a run at night or something, and you see, signs on the bus stop, stay home, obviously take care of yourselves. Everywhere you go, there's just this debris of masks and gloves, and like God only knows what else people have been using to cover themselves, just littering the sidewalk. And I'm like, what kind of bad movie is this? And when is it going to end?
Yeah.
It's so surreal to experience. And the NBA shutdown definitely made it real for everybody. I was like, for couple weeks prior to that, I was telling my husband, I'm like, we need to be serious about this. We need to start thinking. Nothing. And then the NBA shut down, and it was like, oh my God, reality has set in that this is really bad. It's hard not having sports to distract him.
Right.
Well, I have to say, I have given so much credit. I did not think half the stuff that was showing on ESPN would pull a crowd. And then I'll walk in and my husband is watching like professional video gaming. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
They're making the best of a bad situation.
Yeah. Yeah. You almost have to feel bad like for ESPN. And, it's one of those funny things where it's like, am I really feeling bad for like some of these people why would I feel bad for some of these? But it's like, it sucks, man. Like it sucks.
Yeah. Does. It'll be really interesting to see all the plans for restarting sports. All these talks about quarantining the teams like MLB and things like that. I'd be very interested to see how they pull it off. And obviously they've got, umpteen millions of dollars at their disposal to make this all happen in a safe way. But even so, that's a risk they're taking too.
Right. Well, the MLB, I've been seeing articles just the past couple of days about how they're really kind of getting into gear for starting the season right around July 4th with just no fans. I mean, 162 empty games.
It's got to be weird for the players. I mean, you get that energy off the crowd and the cheers and the I mean, I'm sure that they've got a big paycheck to back up what they're doing, but that's got to feel really unfulfilling not playing to the crowds. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Like an exhibition, not even an exhibition,
yeah,
like a tryout or something.
Yeah. With just less pressure. I don't know. I guess we'll have to see how it plays out.
Yeah. But I guess, I mean, I wonder, do you suppose it's easier for baseball to start up than something like basketball, just in terms of like contagion? I mean, because I get the impression you are sort of farther away for the most part.
Yeah. And I mean, if you think about it, just in terms of how the virus spreads, it's primarily through droplets, through respiratory secretions. So, coughing, sneezing, huffing out air. And just in terms of the spacing, they're further apart on the field. There's less likelihood that you're going to be grappling with somebody else unless something goes really awry. I mean, it's probably the ideal sport to start it up with, if anything. Give it a test run, see how things go for the fall for everybody else.
So basically the ball players that are like in the worst shape are like like the pitchers. They
will survive. The guys who are out there who like really should have been working out in the off season.
Right. Yeah. All the CC Sabathia types. Those are the ones that you run away from.
Yeah. Yep. But no, they'll do well with it. I think if anybody can make it work, they can make it work.
Yeah. Yeah. So I wonder, do you think basketball will end up coming back, or do you think that's just one of those sports where it's like, dude, you guys are sweating all over each other, there's just no way?
I can't see it happening anytime soon. I don't know. I just think, with the close proximity and just the cardiovascular endurance that's required and the way they're breathing heavily, and I can't see it.
Yeah.
If it happens, we'll all be cringing.
Yeah, I know. It'll be even weird to let alone the empty stadium. It'll be odd to be a fan where it's like, because you're just going to be thinking like somebody falls on top of somebody else and is, and you're going to go, oh God. And like, that's the highlight reel is going to be that,
Just watching it through the screen would be painful. I mean, already out in public, somebody coughs on the street and everybody's like looking at you.
Right.
You feel the need to explain yourself out in public. Like, it's allergies, I'm okay.
Dude, totally. It's like the Seinfeldian, Larry David kind of aspect of all of this stuff is like, the new like awkward situation is like the, I coughed in front of people.
Oh, I know.
Even like clearing your throat. It's like, I did that the other day and I was like at the grocery store.
Yeah.
And I was like, do I like really quietly clear my throat? Is somebody going to call me out? Like, I fucking heard you. Like, this guy cleared his throat.
Yeah, not in the grocery store. People take that seriously. Probably because you get these horror stories of, there was some woman up in the Lehigh, I want to say it was the Lehigh Valley area, who went into some grocery store and just decided she was going to like cough all over thousands of dollars worth of produce. Like the crazy stories that come out of this.
I remember hearing about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. What the hell?
Mental illness is a tough thing. But, oh, geez. Yeah, I know. You got to watch what you do out in public. So I've been like heavily medicating with Claritin every morning just so I'm not scaring the crap out of my office. But
yeah. Good point. Because it is allergy season.
Yeah, I know, which makes all this, 10 times more complicated. And looking back, honestly, I have to, everybody started to say, I wonder if I actually had it prior to all this coming about. And thinking back, I'm like, my God, I had the worst illness back in February. It was like 6 weeks of unrelenting, horrible coughing and aches and fevers. And looking back, could it have been it? Maybe. Which I guess would be good for me in terms of having a little immunity working where I am right now. But nobody knows how long the immunity lasts for. And these new antibody tests that are out now to sort of determine, do you have the protection there, are just so unreliable right now. And half of them aren't even FDA approved. It's just sort of got rushed out to the public that nobody really knows how long you're protected for. So you can't ease up, the restrictions and the social distancing and the mask wearing. All that has to stay in place until we know more.
Yeah. Even the testing, not the antibody testing, but I probably the one that you would administer.
The
like
swabs.
the just do you have it or not? I keep hearing that there's like up to a 30% rate of inaccuracy on that as well.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, so case in point, like my best friend was like horribly sick, like 3 weeks ago, I think. And it was like, every symptom except for like respiratory failure, like everything except for the worst possible scenario. So he had like the night sweats and chills, like much, he said significantly worse at night. He had a fever, not like terrible, but like 100 or 101. So, bad enough. And yeah, just like all of the sort of cliche symptoms that one seems to have. And then he got tested as he was starting to feel a little bit better. He, was on the phone with his doctor, got a test, negative. And I'm just like, how? Like, I don't see it. Like, what else could it have been? He hasn't been hanging out with anybody, it's like, so he only could have gotten it at, either the grocery store or like running by someone out on a run, which tells me, what is that contagious right now,
Yeah. The testing is unreliable. There's a lot of false negatives, and people are so excited when they get that negative result. But if your symptoms fit the textbook, I'm going to say, I don't know if I believe that test. I really think we need to keep you home and finish out the, proper period of isolation, because you don't want to take chances with that. And a lot of times we will have somebody who gets a negative swab and then we bring them back in, a week later if they're still having persistent symptoms, and lo and behold, it's positive. So, it's one of those situations you can't rely on the test alone. It's just, you got to kind of look at what's going on with the whole picture too.
Yeah. So. Yeah. And I get the, like, if I'm him and, and if I'm looking those metrics of like 30% failure rate or whatever, I'm thinking to myself, like, I mean, yeah, get tested, but it's also like, there's no solace in it. And I get the impression that that's kind of the next thing. Like that's now the new thing, other than the vaccine, is like, we just need to know who has it.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, in the beginning, when the test kits were really limited, that was the toughest thing, is that we were not testing such a huge portion of people. We would save the tests for people who were over age 50 or people who had underlying lung disease or other things that would make the illness more severe. And if you called me as a healthy 30 something and, told me you had the symptoms, I'd be like, sounds like it. We got to keep you home, but we're not going to swab you for it. But as the access to testing has ramped up and we're getting more and more kits available, it's important to know who has it, primarily because we get you into isolation. And then we can also do the necessary contact tracing to find out you had, you worked with this person and you were 6 feet away from them and you had this family member. The sooner we can hit those contacts and have them get into quarantine, that's how we effectively shut this thing down. But it requires a massive amount of manpower and resources and people who can call and follow up on that stuff. I mean, it's not a job for the faint of heart. Credit to all the people who are working in disease control right now. That's not a good place to be.
Yeah, for real.
Dealing with all that, man, they're working hard.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like back to the thing you were saying before about like, doomed if you do, doomed if you don't kind of thing. I don't know how, I can't imagine what it's like to be working on like the pressure of like, people are dying, solve this problem. And then no one else knows how to solve it. I mean, it's just it's a crazy situation to be in.
Yeah, I know. It has definitely also made me very aware of what some of my patients go through too. When I call them to check in on them and say, how are you feeling? And they're supposed to be in isolation at home. And there's 11 other people in their house right now. And they have one bathroom for all of these people who are sharing a space, or, only 2 bedrooms and there are 8 people that are sharing them. And how do you effectively isolate yourself at home when you don't have the resources to do so? Or you are that person who lives by themselves and has no one to bring them food right now. We don't have the supports in place to really help aid these people through staying effectively isolated right now. And it's getting better. There's a lot of agencies that are doing, the food delivery to their doorsteps and things like that. But boy, is it hard to get people to stay isolated. That's half the battle right there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good point. It's like, there's like the one, there's one way of looking at it, which is always like, people that get upset if someone's not wearing a mask, and that's obviously a whole whatever debate, battle being fought, amongst people that sort of take it seriously versus the people that maybe aren't taking it seriously. But then of course you've got this other component, which is like, there are some people that either, they live in like a small place in the city, or, they don't have a lot of money to be able to kind of work around people, and be able to just work from home or whatever the case may be. And it is shitty. I mean, it's too bad that it's one of those things where like certain demographics will inadvertently take a lot of the brunt of something like this. And it's kind of like you sit up and you go, yeah, what the hell are you, what do you do?
Yeah. I mean, it's not surprising at all that there are certain demographics that get affected by this more. I mean, Temple by far bore the brunt of this in the city in terms of the number of cases and the acuity of the cases. And I mean, and if you look at the neighborhood it draws from, it's,
right.
highly densely populated people who are lower income at times. And just, there's a lot of reasons for why people struggle the way they do with keeping up the isolation for it. It's really hard. It's a good privilege check. At the end of the day, I'm like, we are lucky enough that we had, one separate bedroom and one separate bathroom in our house that if need be, I could use in isolation. It makes you stop and think how lucky you are when you watch other people try to work their way through this.
Yeah, totally. And also it's a reminder, like one thing that I keep going through in my head is how like, different people are going to have different thresholds in terms of what they see as like being around a lot of people and, feeling anxious by it. So like, for instance, I live in the suburbs. I don't live in the city. And so like, my anxiety, threshold to be like, okay, maybe we should not be here. Like maybe we should go home or something is probably vastly different than someone who's living in like Center City, where it's like, well, if I'm going to go for a walk and wear a mask and do all the things I'm supposed to do, or if I'm going to go to the grocery store, like I'm going to, even if there's nobody out, I'm still probably going to pass like 60 people or something, just to get there or more. With me, it's like, if I get to 60, I'm like, what the hell am I even doing here?
Yeah.
It's like me, it's like 5. It's like, 6 people. Nope. Let's get out of here. This is too much. And so I know that it's just interesting because depending upon where you live, I'm sure that you've got this different like anxiety threshold for like people.
Oh, I think that's totally true. I live in West Philly. I mean, we're used to seeing people out. So, you learn to take these very evasive maneuvers when you're out for your walks. You're going around the cars to get around them. You do a little parkour up on somebody's steps to get around people. You have to get by. And I will totally drive out to the suburbs to do my grocery shopping to try to find one that is a little bit less packed. Whatever you can do to reduce your risk. I was laughing because right at the beginning of all this, when it started, I had driven, I was in South Jersey for something, and I was going to stop at the grocery store. And, they were letting people in a certain number at a time, and, they were taking all the precautions. And then out in the parking lot, there was a person in a full-on blow-up T-Rex suit trying to get into their car. And I'm like, is this some sort of a stunt? And then the more I looked at them, I'm like, is this their version of PPE? Are they trying to protect themselves? And you just had to sit.
Amazing.
It was so amazing. It's just like, what has this world come to right now? And then I started thinking about it more, and I'm like, maybe I should get some more of these for my office if things get dire and we start running out. Maybe the T-Rex will save us all.
Yeah. And it's like, who imagine, that guy, or maybe it was a girl, you probably couldn't tell.
No idea.
Had bought that T-Rex thing for when they were super popular, like 5 years ago or something.
Oh, yeah.
And was like, I'm going to spend, whatever on net. I remember looking them up. They were like $200 or $300 or something.
They're not
I remember
cheap.
being like, because I wanted one. And I said, that's too much money. But, imagine being that person who bought that to use maybe at like 1 or 2 Halloweens or something, and everyone laughed their asses off.
They're like, haha, look at me now.
Right. This was an investment in PPE.
Yeah.
And I guess, to be fair, they're probably at least better protected than not having the T-Rex costume on.
I mean, yeah, it's going to catch some droplets. I mean, you might look like a fool in the process, but it worked.
Yeah.
They couldn't get into their car for what it was worth, but,
Well, yeah, they probably had to, disrobe or whatever in order to get in.
There were tail issues getting stuck in the door.
Yes.
It was great. I think I sat there and watched them for like 20 minutes trying to get into their car. It was a nice little moment of levity.
Right. That's like the type of video that you'd think would have ended up on like Barstool or something of like running out of PPE and like seeing the person like, damn it, like trying to shove their tail into their car.
Geez, I missed my chance to make some sort of a viral meme here. Just see if I can dig it up.
That could have been it. That could have put the photography on the map for you. That was
I missed my chance.
That was the key.
Oh my gosh. It was great though. So,
yeah.
But yeah, you learn ways to adapt to getting around. And I do think in the city, people have actually been a little better about adhering to masks and distancing guidelines. When I drove out to take a hike earlier this weekend up towards the Lehigh Valley, I was shocked at the number of people that were just out in extremely close proximity, not doing any sort of social distancing, not wearing masks. And maybe it's because things are not so densely populated there. Maybe, because they've had fewer cases, there's a little less panic, but we're all being a little more vigilant here, which is good. It's working out. And it's working.
Well, yeah. I mean, evidently the figures are going down. Do you think that that's a combination of temperatures rising as well as people social distancing, or do you think the temperature is still sort of trivial at this point?
Yeah, I think the temperature really isn't contributing. I really think it's our social distancing efforts here. When that virus doesn't have another person to jump to, I mean, that's really what's keeping this from spreading. So heartening to know that we did it. I will say I am scared out of my mind for what's going to happen over Memorial Day weekend with everybody. I mean, I know the beaches are not open for just hanging out, but they are open for walking and jogging. And I'm just anticipating, like 2 weeks after Memorial Day, everybody coming in and being like, yeah, I went to that barbecue.
Right. Right. I've got a light fever and a dry cough. Any idea what that could be? Like,
It's coming.
Yeah.
People stay home for Memorial Day, please.
Yeah. And then it's like, too, you have to think about when it's like, well, there's no sitting, but there's like jogging and walking. And it's just like, how in the hell are these things going to be enforced properly? There's no way. It's it seems like opening the beaches are a perfect example of the pressure from people being like, this is absurd. Let's just get back to normal. And presumably, like, I assume when you and I are talking about beaches, we're probably talking about New Jersey in a lot of cases. There's an immense amount of pressure from New Jersey. I mean, think of all the revenue loss. I mean, it's insane. To open it back up. And so it's like, well, can't you just, open it up under, some circumstantial things? And then I think probably through a lot of that back and forth, you end up getting like you're not allowed to sit, but you can, there's 8 million people walking. Like, it's still going to have a huge problem associated with it, whether you're sitting or walking, I would think.
Yeah, it's just too many people in one space. And you're right, we don't have the people to enforce that. I mean, we're not a police state. And I don't envy the person who's out there, being like, move along, you can't park here. But,
oh God.
Oh, geez, not a job you want to be in.
Right. It's hard enough to get people to not drink on the beach through their, containers that they have,
Yeah.
Like if my mother and then my sister and her family, and we all go to Ocean City, which is of course like the family beach. Mm-hmm. And so inevitably you're like, well, which which thermos can I use to put my cocktail in? So yeah, I'm sure they have enough trouble with that.
Yeah.
let alone like, excuse me, sir, are you like, no, I was just stretching my legs. Like I'll be on my, okay, false alarm.
Yeah.
No problem.
It's rough. Oh, I know. But, I get that people are feeling cooped up. I know, but I'm just like, hold on a little bit longer. We can do this. Just let us get there with it.
Yeah.
But I do feel for all the people who have lost their jobs and, economic safety over this. I can't imagine being in that position, especially all the restaurant owners and all these people who have adapted and tried to stay afloat in all of this. I mean, good grief. I don't know how they're going to come out of this. So just, it gives me a good excuse to order takeout. I'm like, we're supporting local business.
Yeah. Yeah. There's certain industries where you just have to wonder, like, I don't see how this works out. And of course the restaurant industry being a big one, because you keep hearing stuff like, well, if they just, take out like half of their tables and they just seat half the amount of people. And I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, and this is the talking out of my ass portion. So anyone feel free to fact check what I'm going to inevitably say incorrectly. But, you always hear about restaurants kind of just living right on that margin. It's you can do a lot of revenue, but it's very hard to make a fair amount of profit to keep it going. And I just wonder, like any business that's on a margin like that is also, an event or a hospitality, type of thing where it's just, well, our business is getting a bunch of people together that lives right on that margin. How the hell are you just going to be like, we'll just see half the amount of people? And the only conclusion that I can come to is, well, you're just going to have to charge more money. You're going to have to, the price for everything is going to have to go up.
Yeah.
And, I guess then it just becomes a question of like, am I really going to go get a bagel with cream cheese for like $17? Like, am I really going to do that?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know how you make up for that lack of revenue. I mean, obviously people are getting inventive and now coming up all different ways of ordering online, and then you pick it up at the door or maximizing their delivery. And then you also hear about all these, companies like Grubhub and Uber Eats, where they're just like gouging these restaurants and,
right.
and it's not doing good for their business either. There's not really a good answer for them. So
have you been using anybody else besides Grubhub? Because I've heard that too, and I've been trying to like find a better.
Yeah, I haven't yet. I haven't found another good one. I stopped using them a little while ago, just because the delivery people obviously don't make a great living off doing what they do. But then I've heard that the restaurants are really getting screwed over too because of the pricing and orders getting messed up. So I have just been going there and getting it myself outside at the curb.
Yeah.
If I think of something better, I'll let you know. But
yeah,
I don't know of any other ones.
Well, I know that there's a couple of, like there's like Caviar is one of them. And I think Seamless, is actually part of Grubhub. I believe. I think they're owned by
I think you're right. Yeah.
And so there's a few other, I think there's like DoorDash, maybe. I think that's one. So there's some options. I just don't really know the economics or whatever, like how it works. But you're totally right. Like sometimes it's really hard to swallow as well when it's like, okay, I know this should cost me like $30, but between the like delivery fee and the whatever other fees they're tacking on top of it, it's like it goes from 30 to like 45.
Yeah.
I'm like, like that's a lot.
Do you really want that pad thai?
Yeah. Oh, and it usually is pad thai as well.
God, my favorite.
Or Thai. Anyway.
Anything.
And then of course, it's like, well, now you have to tip the delivery person on top of it. And I know that because you actually have the ability to input whatever figure you want to input, and you don't have that ability for, like, I can't be like, I'll just have my delivery fee be $1 today. You can't do that. So who's the person that inevitably is going to take the brunt of the cheap asses out there that are like, you're going to drive 7 miles and I'm going to give you $2 or whatever, which probably happens all the time.
I'm sure it does. I know. So more home cooking, I guess. I'm trying to look at that as a positive. I'm like, okay, we're cooking more at least.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Not one of my areas.
I'm eating healthier these days, I think, just because of that. We definitely have been cooking more.
I think so too. We've definitely had a lot more sit-down family meals instead of just constant chaos, which is good for the kids. Definitely eating less meat because there are fewer trips to the store. It's working out. It'll be a good thing. Maybe there will be some, silver linings that come out of all this at the end,
Oh yeah.
Reassess. I'm trying to look at this in a positive light because I'm like, we got to do something to get through and just emotionally stay sane, for this long haul. But, I spend more time with my kids. We're eating better at home. I'm working out more. We've sort of learned to reprioritize communication with our loved ones, people that I would normally not talk to except for every couple of months. I'm now having Zoom chats with once a week or something like that. There's been some silver linings in the whole thing.
Totally.
And maybe we'll come out of this more attuned to ways our life should be, and prioritize a little bit better. But
yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because I do find myself, and I imagine this is true with a lot of people, that in a lot of cases I think I'm more empathetic right now because like you have so much time to think. You just have so much time to like for self-reflection. Maybe not so much with you because I know that you're still dealing with kind of a lot of the just everything that's going on right now. But I think a lot of people have time to reflect a little bit more and kind of go, all right, this is how I'm feeling about this. What if? And inevitably, somewhere between the 7th and the 150th what if, you arrive at, I wonder what that person's doing, or I wonder what that person's thinking about. And maybe it's somebody who is like living by themselves. And I'm encountering this like right now. I've had a couple of situations actually with people that I know personally who are by themselves. And like, you know, a couple of these guys like are not doing well. You know, I talked to my buddy this morning and he basically just gave me a whole, like, you know, the text where it's like, you have to click on it to expand it because it, like one of those. And it was just like, you know, just, I'm so miserable right now. Like I'm so lonely. And he just confided all this stuff. And I was like, first of all, dude, like, thank you for telling me this, because the last thing I would want is to, you know, not be told something like this and then something happens or whatever. So thank you. And you know, it was like, dude, I feel for you, man. Like that sucks. I can't even tell you, like people keep joking about, I'm so glad I don't have kids right now. Yeah. I'm like stoked that we have a child.
Same.
It's
it
so
would be
entertaining.
So hard to do this alone.
Yeah.
You know, they're always there and are bright and active and positive in spite of all this stuff going on. And I can't imagine doing this without a household. It's got to be just lonely as hell. There's only so much Netflix you can watch before you go off the deep end. And yeah, people's mental health, I'm sure, is definitely suffering for this. Already all the consequences, you know, of finances and things like that. But to not have other people you can reach out to and not have that human connection, I couldn't do it. So just reminds us to reach out to those people a little more often and, you know, kind of check in on them and make sure that they're holding up okay through this.
Exactly.
Really
so is that kind of how it played out for you? It's almost like you just sort of start thinking about, oh man, I wonder if that person's okay. And so you end up actually talking to them more frequently than you would have otherwise.
Yeah. Not even just with friends and family, but even in when I do telehealth calls with my patients too, you know, we'll get out the medical portion of our visit and do what we need to do. And then at the end, sometimes there's just this social catch up. How are you doing? You know, like, what are you doing to fill your time? They have questions for me about my family and they're always asking about the kids. That's cool. You know, the visits, it's very cool. The visit always takes way longer than I think it's going to, because there's that need to talk to somebody when you call them. And it's kind of nice to be able to fill that place for people who might not have somebody else to talk to right now. So yeah, there's some beautiful things that are coming out of it. But yeah. Check in on your friends.
That's very cool to hear you say. And it reminds me, I have this like weird relationship, I guess, with my endocrinologist, where like when I see him, we like bro out. Like it's really, I've never had a doctor where I'm like kind of looking forward to seeing him, because like we get the, you know, diabetic stuff out of the way. And then it's just like, we'll talk about like the Sixers, or we'll talk about like the Bryce Harper trade. And like, you know, it's like every 3 or 4 months I'll see him. And it's really funny. It's like, he easily just could have been like a friend of mine. You know what I mean? I think he's a little bit older than me, but not much, you know what I mean? And it's like just one of these funny things. And I find myself like, I think I've got my appointment with him in like the next couple of weeks or something. And, but I think it's probably going to have to be a telehealth thing. Cause they've said, you know, I've gotten like 1,000 emails, as I'm sure your office does.
Don't come in.
Yeah. Like, unless it's like a dire, you know, situation. And actually it's funny now that I bring this up, because one of the ways that I save money on insulin is when I go to see him, I try to get, you know, samples, because he always has samples. And insulin, as you probably know, is like outrageously
ridiculous.
Ridiculous. Yeah. So I have been trying to figure out ways of like skirting the system for like, you know, decades. And this is kind of one of my ways. So in fact, if I, you know, can't do that through him, it's basically just like, well, I'm back to paying whatever the outrageous market price is.
It's insane. Check goodrx.com. I tell everybody to go on there if you haven't already. It's not always perfect especially not for insulin, but it can knock down the prices pretty well on some other stuff. And that's part of what's so maddening. I mean, these drugs are like dirt cheap in other countries, and you look at the prices here and you're like, man, and you understand why people get so ticked off the medical system and have no trust.
Right. Yeah.
Like everybody's just out to make, you know, a buck off you. And that's actually, I think, what makes some of this pandemic stuff so interesting for me is you start to get this opinion from people that, you know, all the doctors are in it for the money, and we're all linked up with big pharma, and we're getting money every time we vaccinate you. You hear a lot of that stuff going around, and then to have all of a sudden have it flip to be yay, healthcare heroes, thanks for being out there. I'm like, whoa, okay, things really changed here for a second. Just waiting for the opinion to flip back the other way now.
Right. Right. Does that ever feel like bullshit to you? Does it ever feel like, I don't know, support our troops or thoughts and prayers, where there's sort of these I don't know, bullshit speak that's not real? Does that ever get to you, or does you ever think about it that way?
A little. Yeah, no, I get what you mean. Sometimes it feels kind of superficial, because I'm I'm out here on the front line just like the mail person or the delivery driver is. I'm they are just as deserving of any praise as you are. Honestly, more, it just doesn't resonate with me, and it feels really weird. I know that I am, out there taking care of these positive patients and testing and exposing myself. And I know that inherently that's putting myself at risk, but I don't know, it just doesn't resonate. And maybe it's because doctors are just sort of trained to shut up and show up and do your job and not complain about it. But I'm just this is just part of what I signed up to do. And I know that there are plenty of people out there who don't agree with that. And they say, I did not sign up to, put my life at risk in a way like this. But I don't know, it feels just like a day-to-day job for me. And so it always feels a little weird to have people come out and, with this effusive praise and thank you for doing what you're doing. I don't know. I haven't figured out a way to kind of make it all gel together just yet.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still appreciated. More so, I just appreciate the people who are flat out, how are you doing? Are you protected with your PPE? Is your family doing okay? Do you need food dropped off? It's more that kind of check-in that resonates more.
Yeah. I only mention it because I had a conversation with a friend of mine who's a nurse in Philly, and he sort of brought that up to me, actually, with this idea of the frontline workers sacrificing that kind of stuff. And he was kind of, sort of confiding in me that look, I know that I know that when people say it, they don't mean it this way. They're not these conniving people that are, telling me this, but thinking something else. It's just that overall brand of I think he feels kind of like an afterthought. And I haven't talked to him in a while, so this is about a month ago. And I think it was when people were really struggling to find the proper PPE and all these kinds of things. And I think he was like, look, I'm still there, I'm doing the job and everything. But if I'm being honest, it feels and then that's when I said thoughts and prayers. And he was like, yeah, it's exactly what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. I can totally see that. We've had a lot of more tangible ways of people pouring out their support, though. We've had a couple of restaurants come by and put on lunches for our staff. We've had people from the community who've dropped off meals. Some people who dropped off, little face shields that they had from their nail salons to help support us, to give us extra PPE. So there's been that too. And I will say that my patients, for the most part, are really lovely. I think I'm lucky in that my group is not that, doctor hating, money mongering group, but it exists out there, and it does kind of feel like thoughts and prayers sometimes. So
do you remember that thing? I can't remember the guy's name, but there was a guy who didn't he buy the land for one of the hospitals just a couple months ago.
For Hahnemann? Are you talking about the guy from Hahnemann?
I think so. Yeah. And then he was like, I'll sell it back to you at some outrageous rate or something like that.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. That guy is persona non grata in Philly.
Yeah. I would imagine he can't show his face. Yeah.
I mean, everybody was really gutted when Hahnemann went down, because it takes such a huge portion of, the sickest Medicaid patients in the city that a lot of other people aren't willing to see. And so there was a lot of speculation that when the hospital went under, that the guy who bought it had sort of done it intentionally. He planned to sink the hospital and sell it as luxury condos, because it was prime location right there at Broad and Vine. There was all this speculation about it. And I think everybody thought that there was going to be some sort of salvation for the hospital, that the state would come in and bail it out, that there would be something else to kind of keep it up and running. And then it didn't manifest. And all of a sudden, all of these patients are scrambling to find another specialist to go to, and the emergency room wait times are going up drastically at all the, proximal hospitals because they're trying to absorb that overflow. And then this whole pandemic came along and everybody thought, how perfect. We have this ready-made hospital that's just sitting vacant for all these patients to go in. And then he's like, but yeah, I'll sell it to you for this exorbitant price.
Or I think he wanted to lease it, I thought. Like
he was going to lease it. It was
like $1 million a month lease or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely insane. So of course, they shot it down and said that's just not something we can do. And Temple really kind of, stepped up when that happened, and they turned the Leah Kuris Center into essentially a field hospital, and filled the role that Hahnemann could have potentially filled there. But man, to have a ready-made hospital just sitting there going vacant, I can't understand it. But
yeah.
But we really lucked out. We didn't need the space. I mean, actually, the Leah Kuris Center ended up not ever reaching full capacity, and they shut it down a couple weeks ago because they just were able to get people home. And we're so lucky. We didn't hit New York level pandemic here.
Right. Yeah, that's funny. I mean, even if obviously, if you're a business person of that caliber to where you can afford to do, buy land that was a hospital and then sell it or lease it and things like that. I mean, obviously he's thinking from a financial perspective, of course. But you kind of wonder if it's like, dude, your brand is going to be so soured by doing, like, if we let's not take the humanity aspect out of it completely. Like, how are you going to look when this is all said and done? And, hey, I'm going to build a restaurant or something. And it's like, no one's going to come to that restaurant that knows anything about the history of this.
Well, he's happily back in California, I'm sure, enjoying his multi-million-dollar mansion. He had a house in Philly. I don't think he's living in it anymore, but it got spray painted up, free home. Oh, really? Several members of the community found ways to express their displeasure with this.
I imagine they did.
In true Philly fashion,
Yeah.
It's classic.
Yeah.
So,
that's funny.
Don't blame him.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I guess what goes around comes around or something. Did he end up, I guess, does he still own the property? It's just sort of like...
Yeah, to my knowledge, I think he still does. I don't think they've taken any next steps on what will happen with it. So, yeah, I think it's just kind of still chilling out vacant there. We'll see.
Yeah.
Luxury condos 3 years from now, I'm calling it.
Yeah. Hopefully, in his eyes, hopefully we'll forget by then or something,
We have pretty good memories here in Philly. It's okay.
Yeah. As all the national sports analysts will tell you.
Yeah, right.
When it's like, oh, is there a Philly story? Should we go to the throwing the batteries
at Santa?
At Santa or what,
Or the guy who threw up on the kids at the Phillies game.
Yeah.
We're never going to get past that,
Dude, I remember when that one happened, and it was like, I find myself in a lot of these, defending Philly conversations. And I think one of the reasons that it ends up happening is because my wife's family is from Boston. So it's like, there's just so many extended people. And of course, like Philly and Boston have had a little bit of a volatile relationship over the past, couple of decades, I guess. And, or even further, I suppose, with basketball. But I just end up in a lot of these conversations of like, and I know that a lot of the time they're just kind of trolling me just because they're just parroting what people have to, like, oh yeah, leave it to the, scumbag Philly fans or whatever.
Yeah.
I end up in these situations a lot. And I remember the day that it was like, big fat drunk dude, like deliberately throws up on like a little kid in front of him. And I was like,
you're just like, you can't back this guy.
Yeah,
it
was like, you know what? Maybe they're right. Like maybe we
are scumbags, and we just, we haven't accepted our identity yet. I don't know. We definitely are a certain type here. That's for sure. I know. I get a little defensive when people talk about us as, the suburb of New York or, a less quality city. But there are times when our reputation might be deserved for stuff like that. God, I can't believe that guy.
Yeah. And don't forget the other viral video of the kid that ate the horse shit during the Super Bowl.
Yeah, the Super Bowl. It was right after the Super Bowl. Yeah, the night after when they won.
It was that night.
Come on. I mean,
yeah. It's like
no
they
words.
don't realize that, like, dude, Philly, for whatever reason, has become the cliche. And I think like Buffalo probably fits in there too, because you always hear like Buffalo getting shit on by like sports world. But it, you know, it's like I always tell people like, how come? Why aren't they running all these stories about like in LA and San Diego where people get like stabbed, you know, during a game? It's like what you know, nobody gets stabbed at the Phillies games, but you know, for whatever reason, Philly always seems to be, at least the sports, you know, version of Philly or whatever, like always seems to be that place where it's like they are looking for you guys to fuck up.
Totally. We're being
that
watched.
It's going to happen.
We're being watched.
Yeah, because the national, you know, ESPN and places like that, they will absolutely run that story. If it happens in Chicago, you know, I don't know, maybe it'll get a little blip, but like in Philly, it'll be, you know, it's like, what are we going to do about these animals? Like, see our poll at ESPN, and it's just like, what the hell? Like, what,
I know.
You know?
I mean, this is where the "no one likes us, we don't care," you know, chant came from.
Yeah,
we're going to get defensive about this stuff.
Yeah. Exactly. Have you lived in the area like your whole life?
Not my whole life. I moved here back in, oh my God, 06 for medical school and just never got out of the area. So long enough that I get defensive about protecting the area, and that occasionally a little Philly accent will slip in.
Really?
That it's home. Yeah.
What does that manifest itself in? What, hoagie or wooder or what?
Usually wooder or class. I'm going to class.
Oh yeah.
I know.
Yeah, class. Yeah.
I know. My husband is from outside the New York area, and he's always like, just stop that. I don't want our kids to pick that up.
Right. But does he have a New York one?
No, not at all. No, not at all. He was actually born in London, but left prior to development of any sort of good accents, which is a shame. So, but no, he doesn't really have a New York accent either, but he is a hardcore New York sports fan, which is
that's tough.
A bit dangerous at times. You know, we have to be careful in this house.
Yeah. Well, I feel you 100%. I mean, I may even, to be fair, I may even have it worse because, you know, they've got like 8 billion championships in the last, you know, 10 years that I have to deal with all the time. At least New York is underachieving, at least recently.
Yeah, I know. Right. It helps. Yeah. But it's tough. We don't go out and watch sports in public at bars. Let's put it that way. To keep things quiet.
Yeah. What about the kids? Did they end up, did they just go, are they going like the daddy route?
They go for whoever has the cooler uniform on that day, you know. And the Vikings will be on, and my daughter will be like, oh, they're wearing purple. I'm going to vote for that team today to win. I'm like, vote for them to win? We did work really hard to teach them the Eagles chant, you know, when we won the Super Bowl. But I took my oldest daughter to the parade with me, and she's out there like, E-A-E-G-E. You know, she gets lost halfway through. So we tried, but their education is not yet complete at this point. So, well,
I think there were enough drunk enough people that they probably just echoed what most people were doing, you know, enabled to spell at that point anyway.
I know. You know, she's like, why is that man climbing that tree over there? And that woman's shirt is coming off, and, you know, just avert their eyes. And then the buses finally went by with all the players on it. And she's like, that was it? This is what we came for?
Yeah.
It was kind of anticlimactic, I guess, for her.
Yeah. Well, if you haven't lived through, you know, decades of depression and underperforming and getting this close, it's probably not as meaningful.
Yeah. Give her a few more years. She'll get there.
So do you, are you guys both kind of clamoring to like win over their sports city fandom? Cause it's like an issue for us, like Boston versus Philly.
Ooh, that's hard.
Yeah.
My husband probably more so than me. I mean, I enjoy watching. I'm probably not as diehard of a fan as he is, where he is really invested in all things New York sports. So, but thankfully my oldest daughter doesn't seem to care too much one way or the other. She's mostly there to, you know, just comment on the uniforms and who fell down on the field. And she's not old enough to really have any sort of investment in it yet. We'll see. A couple more years from now.
Yeah. Yeah. I hate to go the like, you know, chauvinist route or something, whatever you want to call it. But for me, it was just like, you know, when we talked about, because she like really wants them to be Boston sports fans. And of course I want them to be Philly fans. And it was like one of these things where it's like, I think I have to pull like the male female card here. And I understand that that's wrong. I understand that this isn't fair and potentially even uncalled for. And I don't care. I'm the dad. I just get to do this. Like,
what if you guys did, like a 50-50 custody split,
I can't even do that.
You get them on the weekends? No.
I literally can't. It's like, again, what you're saying is 100% reasonable. And I should do that. I just can't. It's like, just take something else away from me that I love and just let me have that, because I don't know if I can deal with so for example, it's like we've had relatives that will send like a little, when she was like a baby, it was like infant sized Tom Brady jersey.
Oh,
and I was
like,
no.
Well, I mean, they had to pick that one out of everybody.
Of course. Yeah. Ugh. And it's not even to say that I don't like respect Tom Brady. Like, oh yeah, he's the greatest quarterback ever. 100%. That jersey will not drape over my child's shoulders.
Yeah.
No.
Did it have an accident in the laundry somewhere,
Right.
Little bleach spilled,
Yeah.
Ways
probably
to get around
something like that. I don't think it fits her anymore. She did have a hat that someone knitted for her, and it was like put me in this odd position because it was like such a nice, just like knitted by hand. And it was like, wow, like what a sweet thing to do. It probably took hours to make this and everything. But then there's this, the devil on your shoulder is like, no, Adam, fuck that. Like, get rid of it now.
Get rid of it now.
Trash.
Rip right there. Yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't know what to do, but
yeah,
she's actually a therapist, like a mental therapist. So I suppose to some degree, a similar boat that you are in that she has to do all of her therapy sessions via Skype or whatever we're doing here. And it took her a while to get used to it, because like I would imagine it's probably a lot the same with you, is that there's something irreplaceable about being in person. Like, I don't know, maybe the cadence at which somebody speaks or certain things that they're doing with their body language are different. And so it may be harder to like discern whether or not a response should require like maybe a little bit more concern, but hey, I'm only looking at you this way, so I can't quite pick up on it.
There's just nonverbal cues that you can't get through the phone or even through video. It's so hard. Is she seeing a lot of increased volume? I would imagine that she probably is, and just the increase in stress and anxiety that people are dealing with right now.
Yeah, it's interesting. By the way, I've like tried to get her on to do this, and she's like, I'm not going to.
She won't do it.
Podcast. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you should get her on. Actually, it would be really good to hear her talk about it.
Yeah, well, that's one of the. I actually did have one of our friends who is a therapist on, which was cool. But there's nothing like me bantering to my wife on serious issues that's like irreplaceable, I guess. But anyway, it's really interesting. So in some cases, people are improved. So like a lot of what she does is she deals with a lot of like depression, anxiety. That's kind of like her base level client. And in some cases bad, in some cases very depressed, and in some cases very anxious. And every once in a while she'll delve into other more complicated stuff like, personality disorders and things like that. But for the most part, it's, upper middle class, usually white girls who are sort of, I guess, as she kind of puts it, slowly becoming this like one of these bigger at-risk demographics, because it's like if you have kind of what you if you can get whatever you want to have, it makes life a lot less purposeful and fulfilling. And so what ends up happening is that you see, and a lot of it has to do with social media. That's a whole other thing. But
yeah, for sure.
People that just kind of can't really find purpose and happiness, maybe to the degree that they could maybe when life were A, simpler, and B, maybe a little bit more difficult. And so in a lot of those kids' cases, she's finding that it's actually doing them a favor because they're not sort of at these like top public schools in the country that require a certain amount of attention and a certain amount of they just pressure them into thinking that this is everything, like your grades are everything, or your level of popularity is everything, and all this stuff that everybody goes through in high school. So now that they're kind of like away from it, it's almost like better for them.
Yeah,
they're able to like get away from all that like bullshit.
Huh. That's interesting. In some ways, I thought there would be a worsening, because people would be spending so much more time on social media and just consuming a lot of that, because they didn't have anything else to do. But if anything, I seem to see, at least in my very small social media circle, fewer people on it. People are spending more time finding things to do. And maybe they've just gotten sick of it by this point in the quarantine. They're like, screw Instagram, I'm done with this crap. But people do seem to be finding better ways to, deal with their time. And I guess I can see how people would actually have some improvements with it. But that's a hard demographic she's working with. That's tough. These kids, these young kids and teenagers are just so affected by social media these days now that I'm like, how are we going to do this with our kids when they get to that point? Obviously, they're not old enough yet to worry about it, but just you can't shield them from that stuff forever, but you really want to.
Right.
Because it just, you see all these bad things come of it.
And, they also like some of the kids coming of age now, like, teenagers and whatnot, like they never had that world prior to all that stuff. Like I don't know how old you are. I'm 36 and I feel like I'm kind of right in that 36 as well.
36 as well. Yeah.
Oh, no kidding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So like, we are among some of the last people that really kind of had that dividing line, like right at
pre-internet,
early 20s or something like that. Or it was kind of when it kind of started, I guess. But yeah, it's like, I remember when I was a kid and you'd have to bike over to like, Mark's house, and then knock on the door and like, oh, Mark's not there. Ah, shit. I got to bike all the way back. That's just what it is. And yeah, obviously like the internet's way more convenient because I don't have to do that anymore. But like, it's just such a different thing. And so at least we kind of are able to cling to that idea of like, well, this is still a different way to live. Whereas if you're 17 now, it's like, this is the way to live.
Only way to live. Oh my gosh. I know. I feel like I'm going to turn to one of those parents that's like, no, you can't have the phone. Do you know that when I was a teenager, we used to have to plug the dial up in the wall and, you'd get your AOL and you'd wait like 8 hours for it to boot up.
Right. Like what, why does everyone keep talking about that sound? That like, I
will never leave my mind as long as I live. It's like defining moment of my teenage years.
But. Right. But, you said like, you're worried about your kids. And like, I wondered the same thing, but I actually think, again, talking out of my ass here, but I actually think that, I believe that a lot of things in life are very cyclical, like photography, fashion, music, trends of all sorts are very cyclical. And so that pendulum, swings one way and it's just the coolest thing and you have to do it. And then eventually there's one, I don't know, like James Dean or somebody that comes along who's the anti-hero of that thing. And all of a sudden it picks up traction. Everybody wants to be that person and then the pendulum goes the other way.
Yeah. It'll be interesting.
Well, I have a feeling that that social media will be a little bit, not like taboo, that's not the right word, but it'll almost be like, like the banter amongst kids will be like, oh, what a loser. Like, how much time you spent on Instagram today, you loser. It's like, it'll become that or something,
Yeah. Oh, it'll be really interesting to see if that happens. Who will be our anti-internet hero? You have to wonder. I don't know.
It's going to have to be somebody cool.
Yeah.
You can't be you've got to be cool enough to lead the charge.
Yeah. I don't think we have our hero yet. We'll have to keep looking.
Yeah. And then how will people find out about them if not for, social media?
Because they won't be on. I know. They'll bike from door to door.
Right.
Give out flyers.
Right. So, but yeah, that is such a huge thing for what like my wife deals with in terms of like depression, anxiety and other things. But you asked before, like, is she seeing any more people? There's also, this is kind of an interesting one. So like a lot of, I don't know if emergency is the right word, like IOP is what she calls them. So it's like people that really have like severe issues that kind of like they have to go, they have to be, I'm not like going to say this correct at all. But a therapist is not the right avenue for them. Like they actually have to go to, I don't want to say like psychiatric.
More intensive treatment. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Gotcha.
So those places are not, working as they should now for obvious reasons because of the coronavirus. So what she is actually seeing a lot of are people that need like a lot of help, but no longer have access to something like that, or maybe they just don't want to go because of the obvious risk. So now she's getting a lot of clients that are, kind of more in that like personality disorder category, or people that like, have much more complex issues, which are in some cases really difficult, if not impossible to treat, because it's just, you just are this way.
Yeah.
And so now, she's having to see some of these people. All of a sudden she's gotten like all these referrals, and some of these people are like, 2 sessions a week. So,
just really needing that higher level of care. Yeah, that's a good point. We're kind of seeing the same thing in the medical community where, people who need a higher level of care are either A, can't access it sometimes, or B, are choosing not to access it because they're so afraid of going into the emergency room and getting exposed. One of the Temple doctors was saying to our group that normally they would see one heart attack and one stroke, on any given night for a shift in the ER. And they had gone days and days without seeing anything. And it's not like people all of a sudden just stopped having heart attacks and strokes. It's just that they're now having it quietly and miserably at home, and they're too afraid to go in. And so over the phone now, we're dealing with these cases where we're like, wow, you really should have gone in, or I can't believe we're dealing with this over the phone right now because you really need a higher level of care and you're not getting there. Yeah, it's pretty scary actually sometimes when we think about what's going to happen at the end of all this, when we have all these people starting to finally come back into the office for the first time, and they haven't had tight diabetic care for those last couple of months. We don't know where their A1C is going to be, or their pressures have been completely off the charts and they didn't know it. I think there's going to be a lot of medical fallout where we try to kind of patch things back together and get people back to where they should be. Screenings that people are skipping, not doing your mammograms, and lo and behold, something came up in that time. It'll be really interesting to see what happens when we do start to come out of this.
Yeah, it's a great point. And myself included, like I know that I was supposed to go to get a lab for my A1C specifically for that, and I haven't done it. And, I don't really consider it like an emergency because I know that I take care of myself like relatively well. But yeah, I mean, the fact of the matter is like my A1C could be higher than I think it is. I mean, it's very much possible. And, it gets back to the whole, like risk versus reward conversation. Like, what are the things that are worth the risk, and what are the things that you just go, I can wait.
Yep. We're seeing a lot of people who are waiting, and probably appropriately in most cases, but it was less of a worry a month ago when I'm like, okay, we'll see you at the end of May, hopefully when things are better. And now I'm calling them and I'm like, actually, we're going to move that back to, end of June. And, how far back do we go before we draw that line in the sand and say, okay, we actually really need to get you in and do this in a safe way. That's what we have to figure out these next couple months.
Yeah. Well, I know they were like, like elective procedures where, are they like allowed at this point, or what?
It depends where. So some places are very slowly starting to, begin things like non-urgent colonoscopies again, or breast biopsies that maybe got delayed. Some hospitals are approaching it really differently, where they're requiring patients to have a negative swab for coronavirus before you can go in and have that elective procedure. And so that's interesting too, because then it taxes our already strained system for testing these patients, because, we didn't have a whole lot of kits to begin with. And now if we're testing people to go in for these procedures, then what does that do for our stock when we need them for the sick people? That's why it's so critical that we ramp up our testing right now. But yeah, they're starting to ease back into some procedures in some places as well. And I'm sure some of it is revenue driven. Hospitals make their money off surgeries, elective procedures, and stuff like that. That's where they get a lot of their funding from. But also there's stuff that, needs to be done, like scopes and things like that really can't be delayed too much longer. So
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you about it, because it's like, the umbrella term elective procedure has got to be like almost stupid, right? Because it's like you're encompassing so many things. Like, I mean, I would imagine some of these procedures are like they're elective, but if you don't get them in, I don't know, a month or two, like you could die. Like there's
absolutely. A mass that we saw in a mammogram that really needs to have a biopsy done, but maybe we could stretch it a little bit longer until we get that biopsy, or somebody who's having some sort of symptoms where they need to have an upper endoscopy done, and we sort of push it back a little bit. There's a lot of stuff that walks that line where you can't delay it too far. So that's why they're trying to get back to some of that now. The other big thing that they're really worried about now as well is, in terms of other stuff, is the vaccinations for kids too, because we have been sort of keeping, a lot of places have been keeping kids out of the office or just bringing in selective groups that really need vaccination. But now our vaccination rates are falling off, and we don't really want a measles outbreak, following up on the heels of coronavirus.
Wow, I hadn't even thought about that.
So we got to kind of find ways to get those kids safely in the office so they're not falling behind on critical vaccinations either, and trying to find that right balance too. Pediatricians have it really hard with that right now, and trying to get people in. So just all the health fallout that's going to happen from this will be really interesting to see how we come through all the stuff that got neglected these last couple months.
It's crazy just how multifaceted everything is, and like every person that you talk to has like a little nugget that like you haven't thought of because it's within their profession or whatever. And all of a sudden you realize like this whole other door just opened in terms of like how this affects everything, it really is just insane how complicated, and the domino effect that it has across, everything. Like it hadn't even occurred to me, like, what if we had a measles outbreak? Because it's insane.
Yeah, we don't need that.
No,
we don't need that.
No. Well, maybe to I don't want to end on a sad we're all screwed.
No, that would be good. We need some good news.
No. Well, let me ask you how's the camera search going? What's going on with that?
I splurged. I bought I ended up going Sony Alpha, and I bought the body yesterday.
Oh, no kidding.
I'm excited. But now I got to figure out if I can get a lens to fit it. I've been sort of lost in a world of trying to figure out if I can get an adapter to fit my current lenses, or if I'm going to just lose all of their functionality, and if I just need to splurge and get, the lenses the E-mount lenses that'll fit the Sony.
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
It's an expensive hobby.
Yeah. No kidding.
Jeez. But my old camera's a beater. It's, like pushing 8 years old right now. And it's got a nice crack in my lens from, probably me climbing into something I shouldn't have been climbing into to take a photo. So
right.
I need to upgrade my equipment badly. So I'm looking forward to getting out there with it. I feel like photography has been kind of a bit of a saving grace for me in terms of something to channel energy into. I don't know. I felt like this weird drive to want to create more actually in all of this going on. And maybe it's because I like the level of control that photography gives me, that I can seek out this image and then I can edit it to look the way I want to, and I have total control over it. Whereas everything else right now in my life is just like, So I found a lot of solace in doing photography lately, and missing the interactions that I had with other people in our Philly photography community too, who I would meet up with and shoot with, and not getting to see them anymore.
Yeah.
So I look forward to getting back to that, but I am excited for the new camera. So we got to figure out how to shoot this thing.
That's awesome. You're totally right too. It's like the control that you have over, it's such simplistic is probably not the right word, because there's so much that can go into capturing the right image and editing it and all the different techniques and whatnot. But like, it's simplistic from the standpoint of like, you're just out there and you're like, maybe you're just waiting for the shot, and then you get it, and you just, it's very, it's just a very nice, like almost meditative thing that I always appreciate. It's a way to get into that like flow state, which keeps popping up as a theme on this podcast.
Yeah, it totally is.
I got
into it. Like, when did I start doing it? I started shooting when I was in my my second year of my residency. You're working like these 80-hour weeks and you're just so burned out. And I'm like, damn, I need a hobby or I'm going to lose my mind. So this is what I fell into. And it's just been, it's kind of like a grounding point for me. It's really kept me sane these last couple of years. So it's nice to have that to hold on to, even if maybe the opportunities to shoot are a little more limited now. You can always go back and re-edit something or teach yourself a new skill in terms of editing and composition. So I like having that to hang on to.
Yeah. What are you upgrading from? What were you using before?
I am using an ancient Canon Rebel T4i, actually.
Okay.
From like a long time. I've had it with me forever. And I was just cheap and I never upgraded at this point.
Right.
But it's time for something a little more powerful than what I've been using.
And so you've gone to the A7 III?
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I got.
Yeah. So the lens conversation, as you've probably already come to find, you're going from a crop sensor to a full frame, so that will definitely affect the lenses as well. So it's probably worth thinking about getting some actual E-mount lenses just for that reason. Because I remember like when I changed over from a crop to a full frame, and it was just like the quality of the lenses were just so crazy. Like it was just all of a sudden there were all these, and I realized like a lot of these photographers, they'll actually pick a camera system in some cases based on a specific lens.
The lens, yeah.
Which is nuts to me.
It's crazy, I know. And even crazier when I'm shopping the site and I'm like, I'm sorry, this glass costs how much? And I'm having complete sticker shock looking at it. Oh, geez, I know. Thank God for third parties, but so I have to kind of take that into consideration too. But I'm looking forward to it. It'll be a new challenge for me, but something to explore and hopefully continually get better. And that's one of the things I've loved about the Philly social media community so much is it's just been a good source of inspiration for me, looking at how people have done things and trying to learn from images that they've created and then take that and create my own thing and try to fit. I mean, we're all trying to do our own unique thing out there, obviously.
It's the hardest thing to do.
Oh,
it really,
God.
that is the difference, I think, between, somebody who does photography like does all the things that maybe they're supposed to do, and it's just great work and can do it professionally. And somebody who's like, an artist in the traditional sense is the person who goes, no. Like, I don't care that that's the composition that everybody takes of, from like the South Street Bridge or like one of these places that everybody shoots from.
The Ben Franklin view. I mean, I love the Ben Franklin Bridge. Don't get me wrong, but there's only so many times you can look at that view before you're kind of like,
totally. Yeah.
Let's move on.
Yeah. And it's like, I keep, this is a theme that keeps coming up, is like when you see the composition that just kind of like makes sense. In other words, that's the composition where you just go, oh man, that's a great shot. And slowly everyone begins wanting to replicate that same shot, and maybe they'll move off of it like a little bit, but ultimately it's kind of the same shot. And then, it's like almost, it's a roadblock mentally. You can't, it's so hard to like look over top of it or go around it because it's just, that's the one that is already good. And so I feel like the only way, unless you're just like a freaking genius, the only way to get around it is to probably shoot it a bunch of times yourself, come to the realization that like, I'm just doing what everybody else is doing, and then have the fire, hopefully if it's still there, because a lot of times that burns you out, to go, is there anything maybe I could try to do outside the box here and still be able to get an image which is just as powerful? And that's so hard.
It's not easy to do. And that's definitely, the internet has made that so much harder because, people go to these destinations for the sole purpose of getting that shot.
The same one.
All you can see, the same one. And maybe it's special because you took it yourself and you were there, but you get so caught up in that whole quest to get that shot that you forget to stop and enjoy the fact that you're actually at this really beautiful, picturesque place. And maybe if you walked around and explored just a little bit, you would have seen that there was a really cool view over there to get. And it's hard. I don't know. I still feel like I'm trying to find the right way to do that. But that's what I love, is that this hobby never gets old. You just keep going for it and trying to improve all the time.
Yeah. I mean, weather makes it that great too. Like weather is always like the great improvisation point of this whole thing, is that like no, clouds or whatever are ever the same. And it's cool too, because you mentioned like, I'm still trying to figure that out as is everybody. And case in point, I don't know if you saw the Michael Shainblum one, but
I saw part of it, I think. Yeah.
I mean, he's like as big as it gets.
Amazing. Amazing. I was looking through his feed like, oh my God.
Dude. Yeah.
Amazing stuff.
Yeah, he like even like some of the people on here that like, I'm like, dude, you do amazing work. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have Shainblum on. They're like, what? Like they assume my status, now, and it's just like, I can't even believe you're having that guy on. But the best part about talking to him was that you realize that it really just, and I suppose in a sense, this is also depressing, but I certainly don't intend it to be, but like, even at that point, you are, just as self-doubting as like, the first maybe realization that you had in taking photos of like, hey, I know that this should be good now. But like, damn, I can't do it, or I'm not, that first series of doubts that you get to when you're like kind of learning some stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, it just doesn't go away. And he told me, he was like, we were talking about different destinations and like kind of the landscape photography community. There's like 10 places that they always go to. And Patagonia is like a huge one.
Oh yeah, of course.
And I was like, I asked him some question about Patagonia, and he said, I'm not sure if I want to go to Patagonia. And I'm thinking like, well, you're Michael fucking Shainblum. Like, what do you mean?
What are you waiting for? Buy your ticket now.
Right.
Tickets are really cheap.
I'm like the naive guy that's kind of looking up to him. And I'm just thinking, but you're the man. Like, why wouldn't you? And he said, the thing is, I don't know if there's anything that I can like add if I go to Patagonia. And I'm like, dude, you just like broke through a wall for people, I think, because like, this is what everyone else is thinking that's like good, but not nearly at the Michael Shainblum level.
Yeah.
Like, they're all thinking, I want to go to this place. It looks awesome. But if I'm really being honest with myself, am I going to produce some image there that no one's ever seen before? Like, probably not. Am I going to get the best sunset when I'm only there for 4 days? Like, probably not. And it's like, I realize like he feels that exact same way, that like, does it make sense for me to go here? Can I really add anything? And I, my guess is that he says that, and then he goes and he still finds a way to do that
he'll
anyway.
get an amazing image that nobody has seen before.
Probably.
Yeah.
but still, he'll be the first to tell you that like, I don't know. I don't know that I can. And it may actually preclude him from going there, as it has with Patagonia, because he hasn't yet gone.
Yeah. I don't know. I actually find that in a way kind of heartening rather than depressing. Like that imposter syndrome never goes away. You never get so good on your game that you're like, I got this and I can always make it creative. It I don't know. It brings a little humanity to it. I think I kind of like it.
I love it. I really do. And it validates all the things that you think as a photographer, as a musician, as a creative person, anybody. I mean, there's no reason to think that a photographer, and Shainblum's not the only guy that has expressed these types of thoughts. Other people that I look up to have said this as well. And there's no reason to think that any creative person, whether a photographer or a musician or I don't know, like an architect, like I don't know, any profession or interest like that, there's no reason to think that most of the people at the top of their game, don't have this in common. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's super validating for, the average person that is either not very good or good. Because it's like, oh man, like I shouldn't be imprisoned by doubt, because look at this guy who apparently is feeling it the exact same way. And, he licenses his time lapses to like the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Like,
ridiculous.
This is fine. Like, it's fine to think these things.
I find that very liberating. I actually love that, that he said that. Good. It inspires me. I'm going to have to, you always you have to get out there and try, and just continually try to improve with it, and know that you're always going to feel like you're one step behind. And that's okay. That's a good drive, a motivating pusher for the whole thing. I like it, but the creative process is never going to get boring for me. No matter what, you can always improve.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. This was fun. I enjoyed it. So.
I'm glad you liked it. I was really looking forward to it, because I hadn't really had any sort of official medical community person on, and I'm just, constantly trying to deal with all these thoughts. And so, I mean, really, thank you. I know that, love to be hanging out with your family right now and that kind of thing. So
it's really actually kind of amazing that they haven't broken down the door to the porch yet. I'm sort of in my own little self-imposed quarantine out there. I can see them like peeking through the windows.
What's mommy doing?
Like, when are you getting off? Yeah. No, but this was fun. This was actually really nice for me too. And an honor as well. Like I said, I was sort of surprised that I was invited on when I saw all the names you'd interviewed before this. So it's an honor to be here.
Yeah. Well, I've got to also, of course, spread love to the Philly community as well. It's my home. So, I always want as many Philly people on as I can. So hopefully once this all clears up and there's some, Philly photography events, which I feel bad saying it, but I've like missed pretty much all of them. And I really have to think of my place to go.
Yeah.
But yeah, hopefully we can meet up and shoot and see what's going on with Sony. Cause I'm a Sony guy now as well.
Yeah. So. Oh, you are too? Excellent. Okay.
I switched like 3 months ago, right when this started, actually.
Sweet. All right. Well, I will have to hit you up for advice then if I get stuck. So I'll let you know.
Awesome.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Adam. Take care.